He followed her home, suspecting theft. What he found instead was the one woman who could restore his faith in the world and teach him the true meaning of love, purpose, and partnership. The sky over Seattle shimmered in hues of purple and gold as the last light of day faded into evening, from the sprawling glass walls of his penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. Marcus Wellington stood with a tumbler of scotch in one hand, his other hand tucked into the pocket of his tailored slacks. A self-made tech millionaire, Marcus had built his empire from nothing but a second-hand laptop and relentless ambition. And yet, as he surveyed the pristine silent halls of his ultra-modern mansion, he felt only an overwhelming emptiness. It was supposed to be enough money, control, and security. After all, hadn't his life's philosophy always been simple? Trust no one, and you won't be betrayed. That belief had hardened over years of losses. Friends who'd sold him out. Girlfriends who'd loved the wealth more than the man. And the housekeeper who walked away with his grandmother's heirloom diamonds. He had fortified his life against disappointment, one security camera, NDA, and background check at a time. But tonight, something had shifted. The tension that had been coiling inside him for weeks was now unbearable. The focus of that tension, Sophia Morales. He watched her through the security footage from his home office, a tall, graceful woman in her late 20s, moving with calm efficiency, blonde braids swaying. She folded linens, wiped down counters, and dusted shelves without complaint. Employed for 8 months. She had never given him reason to doubt her, until now. She had been leaving early, citing family emergencies, always with an apologetic smile. She'd asked for an advance 2 weeks ago, her voice strained as she whispered, about medical bills. Then there was that phone call, rapid-fire Spanish, the only words Marcus could make out, más dinero, more money, and the receipt he'd found in her coat pocket when he offered to hang it $500 wired to Honduras. Tonight, when she texted, working late. Don't wait up, something snapped in him. She didn't work another job. Not that he knew of, so why lie? He slipped on his coat, locked up the mansion, and slid into his black Mercedes, blending into Seattle's evening traffic. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was an aching need to understand. Not because he feared theft. Because this time, he hoped he was wrong. He followed from a discreet distance, tailing the number 47 bus that Sophia boarded with her shopping bags still in hand. He kept his gaze fixed on the soft curve of her braid as the bus wound through the downtown grid. Eventually, she stepped off in Pioneer Square, where older brick buildings whispered tales of an older Seattle. She walked with purpose, her steps, quick but steady, toward a weathered community center bearing the sign, Centro Esperanza. Marcus frowned. This wasn't a store. It wasn't a second job. It was a place where people gave time, not earned money. He parked across the street, leaning into the shadows as he approached the building. Through wide front windows, he saw Sophia drop her bags and embrace an elderly woman. Then she turned to face a small class of elderly immigrants seated at folding tables. Good evening, everyone, her voice rang out, clear and full of warmth. Tonight, we're going to practice ordering food at restaurants. For the next hour, Marcus watched from the darkness, breathless. Sophia led the class with patience and joy, laughing as she acted out a waiter, taking orders, kneeling beside students, struggling with pronunciation, and offering gentle encouragement in Spanish when frustration flickered in their eyes. When class ended, she unpacked her bags, sandwiches, fruit, crackers. She made plates for every student. They chatted and laughed as they ate. Marcus stood frozen. The wire transfer, the receipt, the lies, none of it pointed to deceit. It pointed to sacrifice. He staggered back to his car, like a man waking from a dream, drove home on autopilot, and sat in silence for hours. Then, slowly, he opened his laptop and began typing, Esperanza Community Center. Seattle. The website was modest, amateurish, but the work. It was profound. English lessons, legal support, and food drives all operated on volunteer labor and donations. Sophia's photo appeared multiple times. Smiling as she sorted books, handed out meals, and read to children. She had been there all along, not hiding, but shining in a place he had never bothered to look. The next morning, Marcus waited in the kitchen, timing his coffee to her arrival. When she walked in and saw him, surprise flickered across her face. Good morning, Mr. Wellington. I didn't expect to see you here. I'll just get out of your way. Actually, he said, could you sit with me a moment? I'd like to talk. Sophia hesitated. Is something wrong? Not at all. He motioned to the chair across from him. It's about your evening work. The teaching. Her face went pale. I don't know what you mean. He met her eyes. I followed you last night. Silence. Then, she sank into the chair, her composure cracking. Are you going to fire me? No, because I lied about working late. I used my lunch break to buy food for the center instead of eating. I've been distracted, thinking about my students when I should be focused on your house. Marcus shook his head. Tell me about them, your students. Sophia blinked. Then slowly, she began to speak about Maria, 73, who wanted to speak to her doctor without her granddaughter translating. Carlos, a construction worker who couldn't read safety signs. About dignity, not charity. As she spoke, her face transformed. The quiet, careful woman he had employed disappeared, replaced by someone passionate and incandescent. That afternoon, Marcus made a decision. An anonymous donation. $50,000. He wired it through a shell company. Enough to save the center for the foreseeable future. Enough to say, I believe in this, without attaching a name or an agenda. The next morning, Sophia burst into the kitchen, radiant. Someone donated $50,000. The center is saved. Marcus looked up from his coffee. That's wonderful news. Any idea? Who? Anonymous. They just said they believed in our mission. Maria cried when I told her. She was beaming, and for the first time in years, Marcus felt something bloom in his chest. Something like hope. From that day on, he found reasons to linger during Sophia's shifts, forgetting his schedule, making coffee during her cleaning, asking about her day. Their conversations deepened. She spoke of her thesis on economic inequality, her dreams of becoming a social worker, and her longing for Honduras. He listened, entranced. One afternoon, she asked softly, "Don't you have family?" "My parents died when I was 22. Car accident." "I'm sorry. That must have been terrible." "It was. But it taught me to be self-reliant." "Maybe. To self-reliant." She gave a small, sad smile. "Family isn't just blood, Mr. Wellington. At the center, we take care of each other." And he realized he'd never had that. Not in his mansion, not in his business, not even with himself. In December, he made another anonymous donation, this time for a new computer lab. A news clip showed Sophia cutting the ribbon, glowing with pride. "You seem different lately," David said one afternoon. "Happier." Marcus didn't answer, but he knew it was true. One January morning, Marcus found Sophia hunched at his kitchen table over textbooks. "Sorry, Mr. Wellington. I came early to make up time. I have a thesis meeting later." "What's it about?" She glanced up, surprised, then told him about language barriers, job access, and community programs. About brilliant immigrants stuck in survival jobs. About change. "Most people don't see it," she said. "They see someone cleaning a house and assume that's all they're capable of." But Carlos was an engineer. Isabella ran a bakery. People just need opportunity. That's single quotes s. Incredible work. She blushed. "It's just research. It probably won't change anything." "Don't say that. You already are changing things." Their eyes locked. Something shifted. Marcus cleared his throat. "I want to offer you a new position. Full-time, better salary. Benefits, you'd manage the household. Coordinate with staff." Sophia blinked. "That's generous. But why me?" "Because I trust you. You're intelligent, responsible, and you care." She hesitated. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." But Marcus saw the conflict in her eyes. More money meant security. But less time for the center. Less time for the work that gave her life meaning. A week later, she came to his office. "About the job, I'm grateful. But I can't accept." His heart sank. "Why not?" "Because I'd be living someone else's dream instead of my own. The center needs me. My studies matter. And, She paused, met his eyes. "I've fallen in love with someone impossible. And taking this job would feel like betraying that feeling." Marcus's world tilted. Someone impossible. She was in love with someone else, and it wasn't him. 3 months passed. She left the mansion with a warm handshake, a tearful goodbye, and a recommendation letter that Marcus had poured his soul into. The house became clean again, and utterly lifeless. He continued his anonymous donations, followed her career through whispered updates from David. She was thriving, helping families, living her dream. She was happy, and Marcus was alone. Until one day, an envelope arrived. An invitation, the Esperanza Community Center, fundraising gala. Sophia would be there, receiving an award, and Marcus, he RSVP'd. Yes, just to see her one more time, to glimpse the impossible, and maybe, just maybe, to find out if her impossible love story was about him. Marcus stood in his walk-in closet, surrounded by rows of meticulously arranged suits, each one more expensive than the next. But none of them seemed right. Not for tonight. The fundraising gala at the Esperanza Community Center was only a few hours away, and he'd changed his mind about attending it at least 6 times that week. He tugged a navy jacket from the rack and examined it. Too formal, too understated, too obvious. "You're overthinking this," came David's voice from the doorway. Marcus turned to find his assistant and only real friend leaning against the frame, arms crossed. "It's a charity event. You go, write a check, clap politely, and leave." Marcus sighed and tossed the jacket onto the bed. "What if she thinks I'm stalking her?" David rolled his eyes. "What if she's happy to see you?" Marcus hesitated, picked up the navy suit again, and disappeared into the bathroom. Across town, in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, Sophia stood in her tiny bathroom, applying lipstick. With trembling hands, the gala felt like a dream, surreal and slightly terrifying. 6 months ago, she'd been cleaning million-dollar homes. Tonight, she was receiving an award for her volunteer service. "You look beautiful, Mia," her mother, Isabella Morales, said from the doorway, clutching a shawl she'd crocheted during chemotherapy treatments. Isabella had arrived in Seattle just 2 weeks ago, finally well enough to travel after her surgery. Sophia gave her a weak smile. "I'm nervous." "Why? You've earned this. They're lucky to have you." Sophia couldn't explain the knot of emotion tightening in her chest. Part of it was pride, part of it was anxiety, and part of it, perhaps the biggest part, was hope. A ridiculous hope that Marcus might be there, that he might have come. "Tell me again about this man you worked for," her mother prompted, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "Mama, I've told you 100 times. Humor, an old woman. You always smiled when you talked about him." Sophia hesitated, turning to meet her mother's knowing gaze. "He was kind, lonely. I think we both were. He asked about my dreams. Made me feel like they mattered." Isabella tilted her head. "And you loved him?" Sophia didn't answer. She didn't have to. The Esperanza Community Center had been transformed. String lights hung like stars from the ceiling, and white linen-draped tables filled the main hall. A small stage stood at the front, framed by a banner, "Esperanza Gala 2026, a night of gratitude and growth." Sophia arrived early, helping with last-minute arrangements. Maria, her very first English student and now the center's volunteer translator, waved her over. "There's our guest of honor." Sophia laughed, adjusting a floral centerpiece. "I can't believe they're giving me an award." "You saved this place," said Carlos, the former engineer turned IT teacher. "That anonymous donation came after you started working here." Coincidence? I think not. Sophia had wondered the same. The timing had been uncanny. The first $50,000 arrived days after she'd mentioned the center might close. The computers came just as she began planning new programs. But anonymous donors were common. Probably a generous local business. By 6 o'clock, the guests began arriving. Sophia moved through the crowd, hugging old students and chatting with their families. The room buzzed with warmth, a beautiful mix of languages and laughter. At 7:30, she was near the entrance when her world shifted. Marcus, he stood in the doorway, framed by soft light and dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on hers. Time paused. Sophia's breath caught. He had come. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. There she was, graceful, radiant, alive. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pinned back, her smile as bright as ever. This was her world. Vibrant, open-hearted, and it was beautiful. He didn't belong here, but he couldn't walk away. "Mr. Wellington," a warm voice said. Marcus turned to see an elderly man extending his hand. "Carlos Mendes and Sofia Sust told us a lot about you." Marcus blinked. "She has. She said you were very kind to her, that you believed in her when few did." Before Marcus could respond, the room dimmed. The program was starting. Sophia was called to the stage. She accepted the crystal award plaque with a humble smile. "This community saved me as much as I've served it," she said. "When I first came to this country, I felt invisible. Here, I learned that everyone has value. Everyone has something to contribute. We also have an anonymous donor to thank someone." whose generosity has kept our programs alive. Whoever you are, thank you. You've reminded us that angels appear when we need them most. Marcus's hands clenched. Her words, so sincere, so grateful, stabbed at his chest. She didn't know. She still didn't know. As the applause faded, Sophia stepped down. Marcus lingered in the background, watching her greet families and accept congratulations. Several times, she glanced in his direction, but she was pulled away, again and again. Finally, as the crowd thinned, she approached. Mr. Wellington, I can't believe you're here. He stood. Congratulations, you deserve the recognition. Thank you, this is unexpected. I didn't think charity galas were your thing. They're not, but this cause seemed worth supporting. Before she could respond, her phone rang. She glanced down and smiled. Mama, how was your doctor appointment? She switched to Spanish, her voice full of joy. Marcus stood, waiting. When she hung up, her eyes sparkled. Good news, he asked. The best. My mother's cancer is officially in remission. Her doctor said she's healthy. She wiped at a tear. It's a miracle, and I'm so grateful. An anonymous donor helped with the medical bills. I've been trying to find them. Without their help, I don't know what would have happened. Marcus's throat tightened. Now or never. Sophia, there's something I need to tell you. She looked up, curious. About the anonymous donor. Her brows drew together. What about them? It was me. Silence. Sophia blinked, the plaque in her hands trembling. What? The donation to save the center, the money for your mother's surgery, the computers, all of it. But how? How did you even? Then her eyes widened. You followed me, he nodded. That night, I thought you were stealing from me. I followed you here and saw you teaching. I was wrong? About everything. She sat down hard in a nearby chair. You've been watching my life, manipulating it. No, Sophia, please, you decided what I needed. What my family needed. Without asking, without telling me. Marcus knelt beside her. I should have told you. I didn't because I was ashamed. Then, afraid you'd refuse help if you knew it came from me. Of course I would have refused. Do you know how it feels to learn your independence was just some rich man's side project? It wasn't charity. Watching you live your truth, it changed me. For the first time, I understood what real wealth was. Sophia stood, pacing. What was I to you? A noble cause? Something to make you feel better? You were the first person I trusted in 15 years. You were everything good I thought the world had lost. Sophia turned, eyes brimming. I told someone. I loved them. Someone impossible. Someone who inspired me. That someone was you. Marcus blinked. What? You were the only man in my life. I just thought. It could never work. He stepped closer. I fell in love with someone I thought could never love me back. All this time, she whispered. They stood in silence, hearts pounding. I want to ask you something, Marcus said, and I need you to think before answering. Sophia nodded. I don't want to just date you. I want to build a life with you. A real partnership. I want to use my resources to support the work you do not, as charity, but as equals. Tears spilled over her cheeks. You want to be my partner in crime. Fighting poverty and injustice. Absolutely. She laughed, soft and luminous. Then she kissed him soft, certain, and full of promise. When they broke apart, Marcus smiled. There's one more thing. What's that? Your mother wants to meet me. Sophia grinned. She already decided you're too skinny and needs feeding. As they left hand in hand, string lights glowing behind them, the city shimmered outside. Marcus had once followed his maid into the unknown, expecting betrayal. Instead, he found the impossible. He found Sophia. The Esperanza Community Center had never looked more magical. White roses and baby's breath adorned every table, their sweet scent mingling with the aroma of home-cooked dishes and fresh pastries. String lights formed a soft canopy above the main hall, casting a golden glow on the polished floor, and folding chairs carefully arranged in neat rows. At the back of the room, behind a makeshift curtain and surrounded by her closest friends, Sophia Morales stood in front of a full-length mirror, dressed in her grandmother's restored wedding gown. The vintage lace hugged her figure modestly, its intricate embroidery whispering stories of generations past. You ready, mihija? Isabella asked, gently adjusting Sophia's veil. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered with emotion. Sophia smiled, her reflection radiant. More tendre di. Mama, Isabella had been living with Sophia and Marcus for almost a year now, her health fully restored. She had mastered the art of bossing Marcus around in both English and Spanish. And her presence had added a warm, maternal rhythm to their lives. Marcus had learned to enjoy her pupusas and endure her pointed observations about his diet, wardrobe, and posture. He's a good man, Isabella said now, patting Sophia's hand. Different from what I expected, but good. Sophia laughed softly, recalling the first dinner Marcus shared with them. He'd shown up with flowers and palpable nerves, only to endure a rapid-fire interrogation in Spanish, and then be roped into making tortillas by hand. Isabella had declared him hopeless with masa, but acceptable as a son-in-law. The wedding march began not the traditional version, but a soft instrumental piece Sophia had chosen herself. A hush fell over the room. Sophia stepped out, walking between rows of folding chairs adorned with delicate ribbons and flowers. Guests turned to look, and every face held warmth and affection. Her former English students sat beside Marcus's business partners. Community volunteers mingled with tech executives. Maria, the elderly translator who'd once struggled with the alphabet, now stood confidently beside her husband, who was holding a camera with shaking hands at the front of the room. Marcus waited. He looked breathtaking in a classic tuxedo, his usually tidy hair slightly tousled, his eyes locked on her with a reverence that made Sophia's breath hitch. David stood beside him, wiping at his eyes discreetly with a handkerchief. The man who'd once rolled his eyes at Marcus's emotional tailspin was now fully invested. Father Martinez, the priest who had married half the couples in the neighborhood, cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate not just a union of love, but a union of purpose. When it came time to speak their vows, Marcus turned to Sophia, taking her hands in his. Sophia, you taught me that wealth isn't measured in numbers, but in the lives we touch. You showed me that trust is strength, not weakness, and love. Love doesn't divide us by where we come from, but binds us by what we believe in. I promise to be your partner in all things in love, in life, and in the work of building something bigger than ourselves. Sophia's voice was strong, steady. Marcus, you showed me that assumptions can blind us to unexpected blessings. You taught me that vulnerability isn't something to fear, but something to embrace. And you proved to me that two people from different worlds can build a new one together. I promise to be your partner in all things, in dreams realized, in hardships endured, and in the joy of serving something greater than ourselves. Father Martinez pronounced them husband and wife. The room erupted in cheers. Maria threw a handful of rice, despite the no rice sign posted near the entrance. Children from the after-school program rushed forward with homemade cards and drawings. David let out a whoop and pulled Isabella into a celebratory dance. Carlos cried openly and passed tissues to everyone around him. The reception was a vibrant fusion of cultures and traditions. Pupus's shared table space with champagne toasts. The DJ played a playlist curated by Sophia's students, bouncing between salsa, classical, and indie love songs. Marcus danced awkwardly but enthusiastically, letting the children teach him moves. He had no rhythm for dot. Later in the evening, as the crowd dwindled and the string lights twinkled against the night sky, Sophia and Marcus slipped away to a quiet hallway. They stood in front of the classroom where Sophia had first taught English on the night Marcus followed her. A plaque now hung beside the door. The Sophia Morales Wellington Learning Center, where every voice matters. Sophia traced the letters with her fingers. Any regrets? Marcus slid his arms around her from behind. Only one. She turned, brow raised. What's that? That it took us so long to figure out we were meant to be partners. Sophia leaned into his embrace. We found each other when we were ready. That's all that matters. Outside, Seattle's skyline glittered in the distance. Tomorrow, they would leave for their honeymoon in Honduras, where Marcus would meet extended family members who had already begun sending him crocheted sweaters and care packages. After that, it would be back to work. Back to purpose. The Morales Wellington Foundation was now in full swing, funding educational programs, community outreach, and immigrant support services across the Pacific Northwest. Sophia served as executive director. Marcus handled strategy and funding. Together, they were building a legacy not of wealth, but of impact. Some love stories begin with fireworks. Some begin with chance. This one began with suspicion, and grew into something powerful, enough to change lives. Together, they had found the impossible, not just love, but a shared purpose, strong enough to change the world. The Esperanza community, center had never looked more magical. String lights formed a canopy above the main hall, their warm glow dancing over every white rose and baby's breath bloom decorating the tables. A long fabric runner stretched down the center aisle, flanked by folding chairs occupied by an eclectic crowd. Some guests wore tailored suits and designer dresses, others sported modest thrift store ensembles. Proud and joyous all the same. Sophia stood at the back of the hall, in her grandmother's wedding dress lace sleeves, a high neckline, and a timeless elegance. Her mother, Isabella, fussed with the veil, adjusting it for the third time. "You look like a queen, Mia." Sophia gave her a soft smile. "More like a nervous wreck." Isabella chuckled. Her face had grown fuller over the past year, healthier. She'd been living in Seattle for 10 months now, and her English had dramatically improved thanks to Marcus's tutoring. She still insisted he was too skinny and too serious, and she had made it her mission to remedy both. The music began, soft strings rising with purpose, and Isabella gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "He's waiting for you." At the front of the room, Marcus stood in a sharp black tuxedo, the very picture of quiet elegance, but his eyes betrayed him, brimming with love and awe, the moment he saw Sophia step into view. Beside him stood David, his best man, who had become like family, attending weekly dinners and helping launch their foundation. As Sophia walked down the aisle, the crowd stood. She saw Maria from her first English class dab at her eyes. Carlos, now the center's full-time IT director, grinned through happy tears. And the children from the after-school program waved handmade signs that read, "We love you, Miss Sophia." Father Martinez, a neighborhood priest who had married half the couples in the room, welcomed everyone. "Dearly beloved, we gather today to witness not just a marriage, but a merging of missions, of hearts, of two people who remind us what love and purpose can do when combined." Marcus and Sophia had written their vows. When Marcus spoke, his voice was steady. "Sophia, you taught me that wealth isn't measured by numbers, but by lives impacted. You showed me that trust is strength. That love, real love, isn't about control, it's about growth. I promise to be your partner in everything, in loss, in rebuilding a world worth living in." Sophia's vow followed, her voice confident and clear. "Marcus, you taught me that even the most unlikely people can become your greatest ally. That vulnerability is the first step toward change. You believed in my dreams before I believed in myself. I promise to build with you, to fight alongside you, and to love you with the same courage you showed when you followed me. Not just that night, but into a new life neither of us could have imagined." When Father Martinez pronounced them husband and wife, the community center erupted in cheers. Confetti fluttered from the ceiling. Maria threw rice, despite the no rice sign taped to the door. Children rushed the newlyweds with cards. The reception was as eclectic and joyful as the ceremony. David danced with Isabella, who insisted on teaching him the merengue. Marcus's business associates mingled with volunteers and ESL students. Plates of pupusas and gourmet hors d'oeuvres were passed around equally. Laughter echoed through the halls. Later that evening, as the music faded and the candles burned low, Marcus and Sophia stood outside the building, hand in hand. They looked up at the new sign affixed above the entrance, the Morales Wellington Foundation and Learning Center. It wasn't just a name, it was a legacy. The foundation had been officially established 3 months earlier, focusing on immigrant services, educational equity, and community development across the Pacific Northwest. Sophia served as executive director. Marcus handled strategic planning and funding. They worked side by side every day, not out of obligation, but shared purpose. "We did it," Sophia said, resting her head on Marcus's shoulder. "We did," he said, pulling her closer, "and we're just getting started." They would leave for their honeymoon in Honduras the next morning. Marcus would finally meet the extended family that had been sending him hand-knit scarves and teasing letters for months. When they returned, they'd be launching a financial literacy initiative for first-generation immigrants. Plans were already in motion for a community tech hub, and Sophia had just been invited to speak at a national nonprofit leadership conference. But tonight, there was no agenda, no work, just love. As the final guests trickled out, David raised one last toast. "To improbable beginnings, impossible love, and the best damn team this city's ever seen." Marcus and Sophia kissed under the twinkle lights, while Isabella shooed teenagers away from the leftover pupusas and Carlos played a love song on an auto-tuned guitar. And in a city that had once seemed too big for both of them, two people who'd met in a place of suspicion and silence, now stood together in joy and solidarity. A former housekeeper and a reclusive tech mogul, now a force of hope. The impossible one, after all, had always been possible. She had just been waiting for him to believe it, too.